Hello and welcome to the 9 News Business Buzz, where we take up what's happening in business, how it impacts you and our economy. I'm your host, Ryan Frazier, 9 News business expert and CEO of Frazier Global. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Ed Sealover of the Colorado Chamber of Commerce and the editor of the Sum and Substance. Ed, good to see you.
Let's talk business, Ryan.
Let's talk business. You know, we got some stuff to discuss today, and we want to start off with a very special guest. That is Nick LeMaster, CEO of Cherry Creek North's Business District. Nick, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Nick, you guys just put out a pretty impressive report that shows clearly the economic data of what's happening in Cherry Creek. It's a successful urban development emphasizing the power of a vibrant mixed-use environment that attracts business and residents and tourists alike. It's this type of resilience we need to see more of in Colorado, but why don't you run through some of the highlights of what this report says about the economic and overall impact of Cherry Creek North?
Well, thank you again. I have to tell you, we couldn't have been more excited by the results we saw from the economic data that was accrued. $115 million of tax revenue that goes right back to our city, to our citizens, that came out of a very small land mass. If you consider that Cherry Creek is about a square mile in terms of its geography, and the impact that it has overall throughout Denver is really quite significant. And we include Cherry Creek North and the shopping center and all the other ancillary businesses around Cherry Creek. But we're excited about not only the sales tax revenue, but the employment data is strong. The occupancy of our office buildings is extraordinary, and that's not something that's happening in many places across America. Super excited about that because people want to be back in the office and they want to be in Cherry Creek North. We love that. And then the residential component as well. Cherry Creek is really unique in America. There's very few places today where you can still develop an office building and get it financed and get it leased and get it open. So we're proud of that. You
know, you speak of the vacancy rates. A nation-leading office real estate with significantly low 6.6 vacancy rate. Your retail vacancy rate is 1.4%. I mean, these are numbers you just don't see in these days, you know, at least as far as I know. And so there's clearly something special happening in Cherry Creek. It's obviously a place for great shopping and great eating. But I want to unpack something that came up at your recent luncheon around Cherry Creek, and that is this whole conversation about how the economy is shifting.
Right.
You had this urbanist come and speak, and I was very impressed with what he had to say, but he said something around how the economy is moving from a knowledge-based economy to an experience-based economy, which means people want more places to not only live and work, but to play.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about that and perhaps what you think needs to happen in Cherry Creek for that to happen.
Yeah, I think that was really an important moment to hear what Professor Lineberger had to offer as it relates to the experience economy. And it really plays well to just exactly what's happening in Cherry Creek. When you consider great office, great place to work, great place to dine, a great place to enjoy yourself. His only criticism was we need a little more play. And we're okay with that, but the idea would be that we want to have a few more offerings for our customers in terms of events, park space, retail offerings, things of that nature. We've got plenty of retail, it seems, but he's suggesting that we could do even more. But this idea of moving to this experience-based economy was one that was so interesting, and really the first time we had heard that was when he made mention of it.
I love it. And Ed, you know, when I think about whether it's experience-based and knowledge-based, but what's happening in Cherry Creek, and you look at the state of Colorado, what are your thoughts about how the example of what's happening in Cherry Creek could be applied to other models, if you will, around Colorado?
Well, I want to ask you about one thing in particular, playing off of that question, and that is this. How much does Cherry Creek's public safety play into this? I mean, I couldn't help but see over the past 5 years the very different trajectories of Cherry Creek and downtown Denver at a time when public safety has become more paramount in most people's minds, and the fact that you're not exactly a cheap place to be either. No. So you're not attracting these businesses through rent reductions. How much is public safety playing into that? Why is Cherry Creek a safer place than other places?
Yeah, I will tell you, I recall walking the district during COVID. I was the only one coming into the office. And as I walked around, I realized nobody was watching our house. You figure there were billions of dollars worth of real estate investment, of inventory, And so literally a week later, we had security boots on the ground in Cherry Creek North, and we've never stepped back from that. In fact, we've actually expanded our public safety presence. In today's day and age, you have to provide what I think is one of the most fundamental things that you can give any customer, is that is a sense of safety. If they don't feel that they're going to be safe, they're not going to come visit. And so we see that as, frankly, our paramount, most important priority. And so we have a great relationship with the Denver Police Department. We now have them there 7 days a week, in addition to our own private security, and a great relationship with the property owners who have their own security systems in place. And so all of that sort of coalesces and comes together to create what we believe is, one of the safest neighborhoods in Denver.
Nick LeMasters with Cherry Creek North's Business District. Thanks for coming in, and we didn't get a chance to talk about so much more, including the phenomenal impact you're having on the tax revenues for the city and county of Denver. Maybe that's for another show, but again, thank you for joining us. With that, we're going to keep the topics moving because there is no lack of big business issues happening throughout Colorado. I want to bring on Dr. Phyllis Resnick so we can talk about this Community Distress Index, or CODI, and get her perspective, because this is very interesting what you're doing. Welcome, Dr. Phyllis Resnick with the Colorado Future Center to the Business Buzz. Great to have you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
I want to get into this, Phyllis, with you because I'm really intrigued with what you're doing with this Community Distress Index. I know Ed has a lot of thoughts on this as well, but first off, maybe give us a sense of what is the CODI?
CODI, what is CODI? So CODI stands for the Colorado Disproportionately Impacted Community Indicator, and it is an online application that we developed at the Future Center to give a broader definition to what disproportionately impacted communities are. And let me explain what I mean by that. There's a lot of work going on looking at how environmental and public health factors make certain communities more stressed or more challenged than other communities. So high levels of pollution, noise, infiltration, light, and so on and so forth. And those are very legitimate issues. We want people to live in communities that are clean and healthy. But there are also other stressors that are on communities. Are they a food desert? Is housing too unaffordable? Is the education system serving our children? Do they have access to preschool? Do they have access to transportation corridors in order to get to work? So you see kind of where I'm going. And we felt strongly that when you only take that more narrow lens around environmental and public health, you miss some communities that are struggling in other ways. So we developed CODI, which is a statewide application that looks fairly regionally. We use this is geeky, but we use a geography called the census tract, which holds about 8,000 people. So in the metro area, they're quite small. And we look at how communities essentially rank or perform on a much broader set of dimensions than just environmental and public health.
Now, for those of us who might be wondering, how is this going to be used? Tell me how you would like to see this used beyond you researching and giving us this data, and how we are using community distress indicators right now, disproportionately impacted indicators. How could this work into that?
Yeah, so if I could do a little plug, we're going to do an event on June 10th, and so right after you're listening to this, where we're going to actually have case studies of how organizations are using CODI. And they're using them to help do public outreach about where there are pockets of stress in communities. We have organizations that are using CODI to try and understand how to focus where they direct their services. So Energy Outreach Colorado is using it partially to look at where there are pockets of energy cost burden and who they can partner with, who are also working perhaps on maybe those same areas are lacking internet service, and could they join together to reach out to certain communities. We've used it with organizations who are looking to tailor their fundraising, their grant writing, so they can sort of have a deeper understanding of what's going on in communities. So there's lots of ways that service organizations across many dimensions are using CODI. a lot of the other applications, to your point about how have we been defining distressed communities before, have been really about these public health and environmental measures, and a lot of the public policy is being focused specifically on disproportionate impact along those two dimensions only. And so we're hoping that eventually public policy will use something more broad like Cody, but in the meantime, we're hoping that other entities like philanthropy and service organizations can use these data to better understand and focus their efforts.
Well, let's keep it moving. We want to stay with you, Dr. Resnick, because the Colorado Future Center has also been closely tracking our state's economic trajectory through your Colorado Cast. Which, given the current environment of the evolving economic policy uncertainties, the shifting sentiment we're seeing, I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of the key indicators you're watching and that Ed and I and others should all be paying attention to.
Sure. So as you know, Ryan, because we've talked about it many times, the Colorado Cast is a forecast that we do that looks out 6 months, and it uses some very basic kind of indicators that you would use when the economy is sort of trending and not moving abruptly. And so we think that model may be only a piece of the puzzle for understanding where the economy is going. So in answer to your question, I've started looking at things that maybe we don't look at all the time, like how many people are traveling through DIA and retail sales, and with like a much more close focus. Something else I've been watching is something that the federal government measures called the quits rate. And what that means is how many people are quitting jobs, the theory being that when people start to feel economically uncertain, they're less likely to walk out on a job because they're less likely to feel confident getting another one. So I've started, I'm not gonna stop doing the Colorado Cast, but I've started to sort of augment the context around it with some of these indicators that could move very quickly as policy uncertainty and as the economy has these sort of abrupt changes that are happening.
You know, I think we saw this debate throughout 2024, and it's still going on. People on one side of the spectrum saying the economy's great, the other side saying, no, it's terrible. I mean, that's an overly broad question, but where do we fall based on what you're seeing now? I mean, are we an improving economy? Are we a struggling economy?
So I would say the last time we ran our model, which was around the January period, and I say that because some data were from December, some from January, we saw a Colorado economy that was normalizing to sort of long-term historical growth rates. So growing steadily, you know, at a sustainable rate. Coming out of COVID, obviously, we had these very high growth rates because we had shut the lights off, we turned them back on, we had these high growth rates, we were normalizing. I suspect that we're going to see breaks in that. So my take is that we entered 2025 in Colorado with a healthy economy, with an economy that had every opportunity to continue growing. And you know, we'll see. There's been a lot of policy change since we've last done this assessment. And I suspect we're going to see probably some risk to the downside when we really dig in and start looking at our modeling again for second quarter.
And one of the things that I'm hearing from this conversation for you and I to be watching, and for that matter for every viewer out there to be watching, is, you know, how many people are landing at DIA is an indicator of how our economy is doing. Retail sales continues to be an indicator, and how many people are quitting jobs, which I think says more about if they're not quitting, people are holding on to that job for a reason because they're concerned about the ability to keep a job, right? Because you tend to see when there's a growing economy, more movement of folks from job to job. I imagine that's true, right? As I like to say, Phyllis is an economist, I'm an economist in training, so I'm working on it. But that said, these are things that I think about in terms of the big, some of the big economic indicators that we ought to be watching, not just what's happening with GDP growth, which is kind of a lagging, if you will, data point. But Phyllis, in the 30 seconds, obviously you're looking at a lot of the data, and we've talked about this in the past, about the need to really focus on not just lagging data, untimely data, but data now, and how do we improve economic forecasts going forward in the 30 seconds?
Yeah. So, you know, some of what I mentioned, some indicators that are more timely, and then there are opportunities. You just had a conversation about AI. AI has given us opportunities to really better understand what people are feeling through comments they're making on social media and in traditional media. And, you know, I think the future of economic forecasting may very well be to bring some of that very real-time sentiment into the way we do our economic models. So stay tuned.
Yeah,
I
we're
think
gonna
there's a
talk
good
more
future
about
for
that.
that.
I know you've piqued Ed's interest and you've piqued ours. Dr. Phyllis Resnick, thanks for joining us. You know, we've covered a lot of ground today, from Cherry Creek's impact to distress community indicators, and of course, the economic data that we should all be watching as we kind of figure out what's happening with our economy. Of course, we aim for you to stay informed, to be engaged, and to get ahead of the game. So be sure to stay tuned for more in-depth business discussions on the Business Buzz. For 9 News, my partner, Ed Sealover, our special guest, Phyllis Resnick from the Colorado Futures Center. I'm Ryan Frazier. Till next time.